go first. So my name's Tyson. I'm currently a lighting environment artist here at Grease Monkey Games, and as part of the trailer, my role has mainly involved doing the majority of lighting, rendering effects, kind of like camera setup, shot organization, different things like that.
I'm Esteban. I'm a character artist here at Grease Monkey Games. I'm currently supporting the team, providing them with characters, and now this is a little bit outside my scope, but I'm helping them through some mock-up animations, like doing the whole service to that.
And hey, I'm Nigel. I'm senior environment artist. Been working on the outside of the garage area, as well as doing tracks and a lot of environments for TD2.
Sure. So one of the major things when we were initially sort of conceptualizing this trailer was we understood that we wanted to sort of hit that yin and yang balance between something which was like a really nice, quiet Japanese town that then gets interrupted by a completely obnoxious car, right? And the way that we do that is basically, have those really nice establishing shots of that Japanese street that kind of, conveys peace and tranquility and all these things that like are really, really nice. And then all of a sudden you hear this ridiculous engine off in the background. You're like, oh. Okay, cool. And it was meant to be this consistent build-up that is like very much a representation of kind of what we want the game to be in general, right? So this trailer, as much as it's literally just like a minute of footage that is showing, okay, cool, car comes in, drives into garage, introduces like a couple of the characters that you'll see in the background, etc. It was also meant to be representative of the idea that we have for this game, which is that balance between like appreciating traditional but also bringing in something new as well. Thankfully, Kyle is a very, very talented artist, especially with regards to 2D and stuff like that. So he was obviously able to put together our storyboard for us and kind of establish those camera angles really early on, which made my job very easy. We had this environment already sort of pre-established and designed. We were doing it as part of our preview, and it's obviously going to be one of like the main area of the game with regards to like main menu and traversing around within that space and stuff. So we knew that we had to build the story around the perspective of it fitting within that environment. And of course, why we intended on doing like updates and, got you, Nigel, to do updates for the environment to make it look like really nice and pretty and all those sort of things. We had a defined location in which these actions, these cameras, all these things had to kind of exist. Carl did a really good job of taking those actions, putting them into sort of, a storyboard that really conveyed that progression of story that we wanted to show. Of course, it was missing things like timing and all that sort of stuff, but it gave that, for lack of a better term, core concept that, I was then able to take and follow and then put into Unreal, render out cameras, and then from there, as a team, we're able to establish timing for shots and all of those important things that eventually led to what the trailer would eventually be. I remember originally we were pitching the idea that this trailer was going to be like 30 seconds long. It's ballooned out to, yeah, exactly right. It's ballooned out to like a minute 15 or something at this point. But those core camera shots never really changed, right? Which was like really, really cool. It's just a matter of like the length and the way that we kind of, okay, we want these shots to be a bit longer to convey a certain emotion of like peacefulness, and then we want to really like rev it up and things like that. For this trailer, the same way for the game, we're developing TD2 in Unreal Engine 5, which is, very well known for being an incredible engine in terms of like its rendering fidelity, realism, etc. The general go-to note that we have in terms of art working on TD2 is to like make it seem photoreal. Like, look at it like a render of the game, and from a distance, you wouldn't really be able to distinguish it from a photo, which is the goal. That's the goal, right? That's the thing that we're aiming to do, thanks to a bunch of like new systems that they have, which is Lumen reflections, and also things like Nanite for geometry and all these like different shadowing techniques, and then also like our post-processing volumes, which allow us to do like things like color contrast, saturation, just sort of like a sharpening of an image and that kind of stuff for rendering. So a big part of it again was taking what we already had from the game, which was kind of like an established lighting scenario, building out the shots, realizing that we'd built a game around a particular set of cameras, and then realizing the environment we'd built was completely useless for our needs. So that's when we all dive in and start doing the work to get that stuff working. And then from the exact same perspective as like the way the environments or the characters change, because we need to make them work in the context of a trailer, we have to do the same thing for lighting as well. So we follow like a little sort of like 5-degree rule, which is like, as long as the light direction of the sun, you know, like sun god level stuff, as long as you don't rotate the entire universe like more than 5 degrees, things will usually seem all right from a continuity standpoint. But then on another sort of view from that, it's just about kind of making stuff look sexy, right? Like it's just about making things seem good and look interesting and making sure that light's raking across particular stuff. Like one of the things that always upsets me is like, you know, for example, Nigel, you do all this work on this incredible environment shot, and then it's just completely shrouded in shadow. You just don't see anything, right? And it's just horrible. And I'm like, I don't want to do this, man. So like, oh, you know, I'll get like a particular rectangle light, make sure light's raking across it, and then you see all that awesome like geo and normal detail that just like really helps it pop. And then from that, we can continue to sort of like just create something that looks really, really interesting. So we've got that, and then of course from the reflection standpoint as well, I don't know if anyone's looked at a car in real life, but you know, they have really nice reflections that reflect off the windows and stuff. Thankfully, using hardware ray tracing and stuff like that in Lumen, we're able to create really, really nice reflections that honestly, it's kind of absurd that we can render out the entire trailer in basically 15 minutes.
And we've actually been able to do like some storytelling in the trailer with reflections.
Oh, true,
which,
yeah.
You know, was incredibly hard to do before.
Yeah, exactly right. And then Kyle, who was doing those initial concepts, wanted it so that in the reveal of the car sort of like building up, that you see that car in the reflection of the windows.
Through, yeah.
Back in the day, man, that would have been hell on earth to actually getting work. Same as kind of what was being mentioned before. Obviously, Unreal has like a ton of stuff under the hood that allows us to do some really cool stuff. At the end of the day, like lighting and stuff is very important, but it also stands on the shoulders of kind of the work that both of you do, right? At the end of the day, I can light a character as much as I want, but if the character doesn't feel natural, then it's just not going to work. There's nothing we can do about it. Same thing with an environment. If a building looks garbage, then it's going to look garbage, and no amount of light that I use is going to fix that.
I'll fix it a little bit, but not...
Yeah, it'll do a hint. It'll make it look like a little bit more interesting, but yeah, overall, it's not really going to get us there very far. But yeah, so the thing that it also affords us is I mentioned briefly the idea of like post-process volumes, but there's also things called console commands, which are basically commands that we can use in Unreal that allow us to like really push the engine in a direction that it naturally doesn't want to go.
Hidden secret commands.
Hidden secret commands. I've got my little list of like basically cheat codes. If anyone played like GTA back in the day and you had your piece of paper that had all your cheat codes on it, it's like that, but specifically for making stuff look really dope.
Just giving yourself infinite cache and spawning yourself
exactly
really
right.
good shadows.
Yeah. I've tried the infinite cache, trap here in real life. Unfortunately, I'm still forced to work, but that's okay. So yeah, I'll do all this sort of stuff, and it'll allow me to push the engine in a way that it isn't intended to do. Obviously, we're seeing some really, really cool stuff come out in terms of like, you know, virtual production stuff, films, trailers, things like that. For example, we're making our trailer in Unreal. But it is a game engine, right? And it's easy to forget sometimes that it's a game engine. And if you do certain things, all of a sudden your really performant game that's running at 60 frames per second now runs at like 5, right? However, when we're rendering out a really, really pretty trailer that we want it to look a certain way, we don't care how performant it is as long as it looks good and it actually renders. So there's a lot of things that we can do that can like really like, you know, we can basically say, you know, take blur and basically amplify its quality by like 5 times over, and take reflections, but instead of using software ray tracing, which is like or software Lumen, which is the default system, use hardware, which means pull everything we can from our super expensive GPUs and put it into the render and make everything look as good as possible. And then from that, we're able to really achieve the kind of look that we wanted, while, you know, really hitting that high fidelity that we think is a good representation of the kind of work that we're trying to achieve in the game. And I think that's a really important thing for, I guess, people who view this game and, you know, fans and people in our community to remember is this trailer, everything that you see in this is representative of assets that exist within TD2.
And that is super important.
So I've just spent all this time rambling, so I guess we should have a conversation about what you guys are working on specifically as well. I've mentioned your characters, I've mentioned your environment. The first thing that I'd really like to talk to you about, Esteban, is like, a really, really important part of our trailer is the race manager, which is a character that actually exists within the game, right? So what is the process that you've gone through to sort of like take this character that's kind of meant to be a background element and make her kind of the main star of like a very key element towards the end of the trailer?
We usually start off with a sketch from our awesome creative lead, Kyle. And then with that, we start creating a reference board where we put basically all the characteristics, all the vibe of what we want out of the character: facial, hair, clothing, shoes, everything that we want out of this character. And then we quickly, what I do after that is I quickly go to Unreal, because we basically are using the whole Unreal pipeline, and then I use the MetaHuman creator. So I try to build as quickly as I can a MetaHuman that will match the ethnicity, the age, and the proportions of the character that we want. In this case, the race manager. And then what I get from there is like pretty much a really good high detail base mesh. And then I bring that into ZBrush. That is basically my main tool to characters. And in ZBrush, I start building slowly the asset. Once in ZBrush, I have to move away from ZBrush at the beginning, but it's because we have to start building. I usually start building the clothing, and then I go to Marvelous Designer. Marvelous is a great program for simulating clothes. So we start building the clothing. In this case, she had a jacket, under a shirt and a skirt. And then once we are sort of happy with that simulation, we bring that back into ZBrush, and then the party starts, where we keep adding resolution to that. Before that, we sort of had a little bit of a process that is sort of have to explain, but it's basically the one that will let us then subdivide these meshes and get more details and more control inside ZBrush. So in ZBrush, we can change proportions easily. We can delete or add more folds, memory folds, seams, surface details that will end up being the fabric of the character. And once we are sort of happy about the process of the clothing, we move back to the really hard part, that is the face. She's a girl and she's Asian. That's really hard to tackle, pretty much because Asian women have really subtle details, and everything you do, like, you just sort of destroy it if you move it too much, you know?
And so it's little nuances, right? That, like,
the nuances of the character. So you just have to be careful around that. And we really wanted her to be special. We really wanted her to be this young Asian girl that it won't be too stereotypical in their drift scene, because we sort of did that at the beginning, and we really didn't want to go like other direction. We did a lot of iterations with Kyle, our creative lead, and he basically will start doing draw overs over my 3D, and I will start matching his work. And then we do that by a lot of times. Heaps of times. I think this character was a little bit it was really hard to tackle. I forgot to mention that when I'm building the head, I usually build as well the hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, and then we got all this information: clothing, face, hair, and then we start bringing everything together to Unreal. And also building the final low poly mesh that is gonna be the one that's gonna have all the information of those high poly meshes that we did in ZBrush, and we're gonna bake that information of the high polys into low poly, and to that low poly mesh. And that low poly mesh is really, really important because it has to hold silhouette. It has to hold all the fine details, even if it's like lower res. And this is the one that we're gonna rig, we're gonna use for physics, we're gonna use it for everything. We bring all of that into Unreal, and then we keep working and doing few more iterations. Now with her whole vibe, at the end we end up changing a little bit of the design of the jacket, design of the fabrics he was using, a lot of her face as well, kept changing and may change in the future a little bit, and then that's pretty much what we did with the race manager. We usually do that with every character.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say, so obviously there's the whole iterative process that we go through with characters and making them work and stuff. And what you've discussed there is obviously a ton of work that goes in before it even ends up in the Unreal Engine, right? But obviously using metahumans as a base has been helpful in some regards. I know with regards to some of our background characters, they're pretty much just being made in MetaHuman and then pulled straight in. But with that, we also get access to things like the MetaHuman rig and stuff like that. So are you using the MetaHuman rig in an external program to assist with animation, or is there certain stuff that you have within the Unreal Engine that you're able to use to help you adjust things like keyframing and timing and stuff like that?
So our goal is basically use Unreal as much as we can. Mm-hmm. So at the moment I think we are in a 80% percentage of being in Unreal, developing the whole thing, because the MetaHuman rig is inside Unreal. You can use it in software like Maya, but we still wanna push it inside Unreal. We record mockup, and then we can clean everything in Unreal, and that's the goal. For this particular race manager, we sort of had we got to a point 80%. We sort of give that to an animator that will help us, and I think he used Maya or Blender, not sure, but he will give us back a little bit more cleaner animation with some few more that stuff that our artists could pick,
those nuances, right? Those subtle things,
little movements of the hand,
takes it from feeling like a game to feeling like an actual
secondary motion.
Secondary animation.
We are sort of taking everything of the facial animation ourselves and doing everything in Unreal, so that we are not doing that with the animators, just mostly body animation.
So if characters are one half of the important part, and one third, and then obviously the car, lighting, all that sort of pretty stuff is the other important part, then I guess in many ways the unsung hero of videos and trailers like this would be considered the environment. It's very, very easy for the environment to look really bad and for everyone to notice, and 9 times out of 10 when the environment is perfect, that's when no one notices.
That's it, isn't it? You don't want anyone to notice.
Exactly.
It blends into the background.
Exactly right. You've done a good job when no one cares. So that's kind of the nature of it. So obviously I kind of mentioned it a little bit when I was talking about it, the fact that we went through a process of taking what we already had and sort of updating it. So could you just give us a quick rundown of kind of what you were looking for when you were flying through? So I guess looking at shots and stuff, what were specific things you were looking for that you were okay, this is just not up to snuff, I need to update this? And then what was your process for being okay, this thing does need to be fixed, I'm going to go about actually fixing it? Yeah,
well, believe it or not, the garage environment was the first thing we actually made for TD2,
right?
Along with the garage, and it was definitely made for a particular viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
At the time, you was only going to be inside the garage, looking out, and it just needed to look pretty from that perspective.
The classic blunder, that one, where we're it'll be fine, and then we're and this needs to look great outside as well.
Yeah. So when we started doing this trailer, they came back with the storyboard. Kyle came back with a really great storyboard to get us going, and I'm just we didn't design any of this to be looked at. We didn't design any of this to be seen close up.
Yeah. It's a bit nerve-wracking when that happens, isn't it? You're oh man, this is cool, man. And you just start thinking about the amount of work that needs to be done.
Look, it was actually in a pretty good spot to begin with. We using UE5 and having these great tools with Nanite and everything, we were able to put a lot more into it, and I think than you'd usually be able to put into an external environment that's not really going to be seen by the player. So having to up-res it so we could actually fly the camera through it and not have seams, And you were talking about like having these shots set up in the trailer and we can just see straight into the abyss at this point.
Yeah.
You know, that alleyway between those buildings doesn't exist because it never needed to exist.
Cool. So obviously a part of that, you're talking about like cleaning up texture seams and stuff like that. So that's up-resing textures. For our viewers, that's basically the process of taking something that might look a little bit down-res or a little bit, I'm sure you've seen it in video games before where things just look a little bit blurry, and we're taking it up to a point that's just like of a way higher quality. So are you doing that in a way of just taking the original texture, or are you kind of completely redoing it in a way that works within our current setups?
So we had optimized the whole scene for the garage drop. We've been going through adding tons more detail, really fleshing out these environments to make them feel lived in, you know, and dense and have that.
And you do that in the form of like set dressing, right? So obviously there's the making it feel dense with regards to the actual like textures that exist, but then set dressing, or the act of actually placing assets around, it's usually a case of like you realize how empty a world feels until you just start to add tons of like random clutter and stuff, right? That's
it, and that's going to really start making it feel real, you know. And I know for this project we're really trying to aim for realism, you know, bit of gamification,
of course,
but mostly realism.
It's just through like, I guess like in the same way, because we've added like other things in the background, like it's not just buildings and stuff. We have things like cats, right? Like our creative lead, Kyle, was like, I want cats everywhere. I'm like, say no more. We'll add cats everywhere. I love cats, right? But also thinking about it from like birds and things as well, right? But that sense of realism, like, and this is the beauty of working in like a team together, right? It's like we've got all of our individual disciplines, but it's when all those disciplines come together, kind of like a Mighty Morphing Power Rangers, right? Like we're combining all of our assets and building this like massive robot, and it works best when we work together, sort of deal. Your environments work best once my lighting is complementing it, and then likewise my lighting works best because you've put so much work and detail into the set dressing. There's plenty of shadows to like cast across and things like that. So it's this kind of work that like really pushes it to the next level. I also just want to quickly touch on, so I love the idea that like obviously there's been points where you can just sort of like see out into the void, right? Like you've just got like all these empty parts and stuff like that. With regards to this, obviously we want to build this in such a way that it is performance still. We want to make these updates so that just our world looks better in game as well. Anything we do in trailer, ideally we can put into the game as well. Can you cover a bit about like, you know, where you're using, like we're using nanite and stuff like that. And we know that for those who don't know, nanite's a really impressive technology that allows us to sort of cull polygons so that everything remains super optimized. So would you say that pretty much every asset that you're bringing into the world is using nanite in such a way that if you're still in those situations where you can't see things, that stuff's getting cold and remaining performant?
Oh, for sure. Like we're leaning heavily on nanite. In UEFI. I mean, why wouldn't we? It's cool. It's it's incredible.
Really, it's kind of black magic, if I'm being honest.
So with that as well, the ability to put lots of triangles on screen doesn't mean they're free still.
Yes, of course.
It doesn't mean all the objects in that scene are free either. Basically, it means doing a lot of things called instancing, which is taking one object and basically duplicating it on the GPU, so the GPU doesn't have to keep drawing it. It just knows where to put that same object because it's already drawn it. You can just put it around 1,000 different times, not for free, but like basically for free. So that is what we're doing for everything, basically. Awesome. Everything that is scattered around, rocks, wood, planks, grass, everything that's duplicated in a sense, is all instance, all super performant. Oh, very cool. And then I guess like one more question just based on like environment stuff, right? So I should know the answer to this question, but I actually don't. Have you done any work on the actual garage itself in any way, or has that been mostly kept as is? No, the garage has been
just as it is.
That's the garage drop. That's what everyone's going to see.
So that's awesome. So I guess again, like the reason I asked that is that again is just another great example of the way that the trailer is going to be a true representation of actually what the game is, right? Obviously, you know, a big part of like working on these environments and stuff like that is, you know, making them look believable and realistic. But a big part of the work that we do as artists is taking reference in order to achieve these kind of things. So I actually have a question for both of you. So I'm going to ask both of you, and then obviously you can come from the perspective of a character and you can come from the perspective of environment. But like, what kind of reference and what inspired kind of the designs for the work that you've been doing? I guess we'll start with you, Esteban.
Basically, a lot of the Japanese drifting scene.
Okay, cool.
But usually Kyle is the one that brings all these ideas reference. So I basically focus on building the character that has a sort of story. And I love his sketch. Like his sketches are like pretty specific for what he wants. And then
I've seen some of that concept work. It's really cool.
I know we are using MetaHuman for all of this, but our main characters, they don't look like MetaHuman.
Yeah, awesome. And you, Nigel, inspiration for the environment.
Yeah, look, you know, you can't make a cool environment from nothing, you know. And the best reference for that, especially with us aiming more realistic, is to look at the real world. So we found a great place in Kodo City, where we've been heavily referencing street layout, you know, how the plants grow between the cement, what kind of asphalt they use, how the curbs work. You know,
cool.
The fact that everywhere has a little car ramp, so there's no driveways, there's these ramps up the gutter. I was lucky enough to actually go to Japan with GMG back in November for our Japan trip, and that was great just to get reference and just to feel the vibe of how these places are all put together. Because it is such a unique environment, and it is so different to the feel of how we do here. Like, it's incredible how blue the sky is there. You can't even explain to people how.
As I said, it's a vibe, right?
Yeah, it's a vibe. I don't think you can't replicate that vibe, I think, unless you've been there and experienced it. And
very cool.
Yeah, I think we're hitting a pretty good spot.
I think we're doing pretty well, all things considered. I've seen some of those photos from that trip, and like, I think in general, like, we're doing super good. I mean, anyone can hop on Google Maps and like go and check it out, but there's something about being in a place. Like, there's a reason, you know, they do, like, you know, photography and reference trips
all,
like this.
All the set dressing is all the things you just wouldn't think of. The amount of plants and
micro
things
detail.
that are around, micro detail.
Yeah.
And like Esteban was saying, just adding those bits of like character to this. Like, there's a bit of set dressing I really liked for the garage, where we had a bit of a blank wall in one of the alleyways we wanted to cover up. So I thought, well, you know, we've got the air conditioning unit there, so we've got ivy that crawls up.
Oh, that's so dope, man. Yeah,
Let's try to think of how these things like actually work as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, the water dripping down is going to create, you know, the plants being more alive at the bottom where the water's pooling and all that kind of stuff. So try to think about that while we make these environments to make them feel just that next level a little bit.
Yeah. And I love that, because once again, that completely circles back to what we originally said about, if you make the environment right, no one will notice.
That's it.
Right? So the fact that you've done this, like, this beautiful thought and consideration for the reason Ivy would be climbing this wall, which is such a cool detail, right? And people see it for 5 seconds and be like, yes, sweet.
I don't think you can even see it in the trailer.
Okay, that's so good. Yeah, but at the end of the day, no, that's really cool, man. That's awesome.
You can just see it. It's like behind the bells, like all completely depth of fielded out.
You know, I know that's the important stuff. All right, so just as like a fun little tidbit, but we've got other vehicles that you've seen in the trailer as well. We've got like the bike, we've got like the scooter and stuff like that. Not that it's like really important or anything, but they
get just as much love. Come on,
they need just as much love. And to those savvy amongst you might know that a scooter only has 2 wheels. So yeah, what was the issue that we ran into when trying to simulate these scooters?
Look, man, I couldn't not get that thing to stand up straight and cruise along. It was just flipping sideways and doing all sorts of crazy.
It's like
things.
a toddler on a scooter, right?
It was just straight over.
That's good. Just on a side note. So obviously, Nigel, you're talking about like feeling like you'd kind of been put into stuff that you hadn't really experienced before and stuff like that. And then
that's just making games.
It's just making games, isn't it? It's like just jumping into it. Same thing with you. Like obviously you're a super, super talented character artist, but dealing with like animations and stuff like that. It's been crazy. I just want to throw in one of my own little ones. I don't animate birds and cats for a living, but here we are. We've got some birds and cats in there, and it's...
How many cats we got?
How many do we have? I can count for them right now.
They keep appearing.
I've got so many in there. It's actually going to turn into Easter eggs now, because you've got the first one that appears on the truck that's there, and then you've got one behind the truck, and both of them run off when the car comes revving by. Then, in the second shot where the cyclist goes past, there's a cat that's sitting there on the ground. Those with a keen eye will see that there's a cute little kitten snuggled up next to it as well, which is like really cool. And then there's another cat up on that roof in that same shot. And then in the final shot where the car pulls up to the garage, there's a white cat that's like walking across and stuff.
So now we need to put more in so they could...
I'm thinking I just put like a ludicrous number in there, but make them harder and harder to find. So people will be like, oh, well, there's like 10 cats.
Just
I'm
one
like, man, there's like 120. What are you talking about? All right, Esteban. So, a big part of us like building these characters and stuff and doing the animations and stuff, one of the things we haven't touched on is our very cool Rokoko mocap suit, right? Which allows you to, dress up and do animations and stuff. Just while we're here, in the background, we have Tony. Do you want to come into shot quickly, Tony? So Tony's our super talented actress that has done all the cool work for us and said, welcome back, and all this other stuff. Do you want to do a quick little test of that? And just
you are the star of this trailer.
Hey, welcome back. It's not in Japanese.
Nah, it's fine. I'd give you $1 trillion to act in my movie. All right. So we did all that sort of stuff. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate you. Because we tried to do some tests and stuff, and we just kind of didn't get. I don't know how to describe it. We just didn't quite get the feminine nuances, right? Like, I don't know. I'm a 6 foot, 120 kilo bro, right? Like walking along. It just wasn't going to work, right? So, do you want to take us through the Rokoko suit, mocap, and kind of just the whole process for that?
So we got this suit like a month ago, and we were a little bit. We got characters. We had characters, but we didn't have that. Solution for the animation part, and we sort of searched for solutions outside the office, but the answer was inside all the time. So we basically got this suit. I start working on how this workflow would work. Like my main goal was to make this suit work like live stream, like live in real, so we could sort of like a virtual production sort of way. We can picture like Tony in the suit and in our garage and see how she will perform. So that was really interesting and different to do. So for the trailer, I tried many times to do a nice female walk, but I couldn't. So I have to turn into volunteer. So Tony was the one that actually did it, and she did a great job.
Yeah, you knocked it out of the park. Well done, Tony. Round of applause for Tony. Yay! Very good.
And we also test on. Test for facial animation. So actually, Tony's one is the one that ended up. So I think if you think about the first race manager in the game, it's gonna be always Tony.
Very good. Yeah, that's awesome. Wait, does the race manager actually have a name in the game, or is it just race manager?
Tony.
Yeah, it might have to be Tony. We might have to call the race. It might have to be. That's all right. This will be on YouTube, right? Say in the comments. Give us likes. Tell us if you want it to be called Tony or not.
What should our race manager be called?
Fictional game world to life, eh?
Game world.
That's hard because part of me wants to say like my favorite game franchise, which is Halo, but that means that humanity almost gets destroyed by an alien race. So I'm not sure if I want that.
I would say like Resident Evil or something.
Yeah, right. I'm just like that's a bad choice, man. That's a zombie apocalypse world.
I was going to say Phantom Dust, which is just a desolate wasteland.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like it needs to be something that'd be like more silly and fun like that, like a kind of world where like things can't really go wrong.
What about Pokemon?
Pokemon would be good. Yeah, that's a good shout.
We can be friends with animals.
Absolutely. I'd be an absolute like catch 'em all. Like I'd want to be a master.
Pokemon Go.
Totodile, best Pokemon. Oh, no, I know exactly what I'd want it to be. It would be very hard to communicate, but it'd be so funny, and that's all I care about. So I've just said that Halo was my favorite game franchise of all time. It wasn't until Halo 2 that the elites actually started speaking English. So I'm going to go Halo 1 sound effects. What? Exactly right. So you can specifically be aware of like the things that like, or even just elite sounds, right? Because there's that great meme from like Halo 2 where the elite like runs up to the camera. He's like, greetings, and all that sort of stuff. So like, I can do all these things to communicate that way.
If you come over and get a kill-tacular, you know you've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was going to say that. You could have like the grunts running away. That could be just me being genuinely scared. Like, oh, can you go and render this shot? Like, just like, I'm not doing it. Get me out of here. Yeah, cool.
That's really cool.
Do you have any?
You know, this is not a game, but I remember the old messenger. That little annoying...
Clippy, or whatever it is. Yeah.
I will be all the time that. Like, give me that.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Answer my email.
I'd be more of a Blinks the time.
Oh, that's such
not sound effects,
banger of a
but
game,
like,
though.
that's
big respect. Yeah. when Unreal 5 first dropped, so this was early last year, everyone was super excited about it, and as part of that, Epic released a game or a demo which was called the Matrix Awakens demo. They did that in partnership with the actual movie that was coming out at the time, but it was also to showcase just the ridiculous technology in Unreal 5 when it was coming out. Everyone was like, oh, that's so cool, and like when the gameplay section finished, you could kind of like walk around the city and kind of see this very realistic city brought to life. Well, eventually, when Unreal 5 dropped, they also released this city as part of their packages, their Unreal packages, and you could go in there and actually play around with this city. The first thought that entered my brain was, this sucks, walking around is dumb, I want to fly like Superman. Hence this t-shirt, right? I'm a Superman fanboy, I'll admit it, right? I made this and I put it out there. It was a process in of itself. Swapping the character around was simple enough, just building like a basic Superman character and stuff like that. I should imply this is called a Superman style flight experience so that DC can't hunt me down.
Oh, you saw the Unilad Gaming title a mile away, where they went new Superman game announced
100%.
using UE5.
I knew it was coming, but I wasn't going to be liable for that. So I was very careful to make sure that the actual logo isn't on there or anything that they could get me for trademark. So they've had to leave me alone, which has been great. All right, so we're finishing up. Thank you again,
Nigel.
Esteban.
And I've been Tyson. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed listening to our sort of process for how we've created the trailer and all the work that goes into kind of building this kind of stuff. Just some sort of final things. Make sure you go actually check out the preview. It's out now. Let us know what you think of the trailer on YouTube and whatever else is on Instagram, stuff like that. Let us know. We like seeing comments. Let us know anything that you would like to potentially see. We're always paying attention to your comments. There's always things that we're considering about putting into the game, and then also things that we can show you about the development of Talk Drift 2 as well. So we're always interested in that stuff. Let us know what you think, and yeah, any ideas that you might have. As we mentioned before, we might get you all to name some of the characters in the garage. I think that'd be like really cool. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. And yeah, just remain engaged, and we appreciate all of you. Cheers.